Hello everyone. So I'm gonna start reading the first 6,000 words of the book, The Storm of the Worlds, which is the first book in the Banner of the Broken Cross series. Every 6,000 words is known as a Supra section. So this is Supra section 1. And each poem has, well, it's all one poem, but each section has a different character speaking. This first character is known as Bard Prophet. I'm just going to start reading his monologue here. I sit here now and forever on the floor of the library, ingesting all the knowledge that I can find. The storm of the world batters always against my fortifications, and I know the king will come in glory. The magic in the air symbolizing our futures, that in the darkest night, when all eyes in the world are blind, that we lift our eyes to the heavens and see the light piercing through the clouds. Patience and diligence of never giving up. The waves of our oceans meet our shore. And we realize that the passing time passes all events, people, and places we knew together into memory. Stand with me, hold the light of God, and walk by it. Hold my hand as we tread toward our future, now and unto ages of ages. The spirit of the life that has fled the world falls away from us, but longing for the ulcer in the soul to be repaired. Truth can be found waiting in every crevice within the world. The dancing galaxies passed us by, and the light of God was no longer found anywhere. We fell victim beneath the banner of the broken cross. We knew that the life in our souls was always subject to the passing passions of the ministers of death. And we stood as lonely souls, unable to stop the flood of gasoline pouring down against our skin. The universe of ours was always subject to decay. But we always knew within our twisted hearts that the desperate anthems of our youth would once again rise from the ashes of a world about to take its last breath. We descended deep into the recesses of our own vacuous hearts, and nothing could fill our hearts except for the anxiety we imbibed into ourselves. The light of God had gone out forever, and no one would ever know if it would return. I craved a life away from the universe I'd fallen into so deeply, with no way ever to find any other worlds. I counted my mortality, the passing and fleeting days left of my life. The sway of all the oceans, drawing me and tempting me to fall under their spell forever. I would sit by the same shore, counting the waves that would come, and I always knew that one day one of these waves would sweep me afar off, and I would only need to lie back and enjoy the riptide. And I knew that my descendant one day, she will ride in these waves, with a spiritual connection in her soul, lighting up the world but crushed by the ever-expanding expanse of shadows. I can feel forever the glorious flow and sway of these oceans, where we together no longer stand but float in these oceans, feeling the euphoria, pure chemicals and minds that are one with God. Human nature totally united to what is beautiful, knowing that we fall under the flow and the sway of these same oceans, never again to re-emerge from the waters, totally swept off to where we knew we would find our meaning. I am Bard, prophet and chanter of gentle songs now and forever, that light up the mystery of the world now falling into shadows, where a voice is not heard, where words are violently suppressed and thrown into the ground, the life and veins drowned out under the spell of a million clamoring sounds. And we remember that we found God in the silence. The clutter of my heart, now burning up forever, and the smog from this fire will always reach up towards the heavens. My champion heart, glowing forever in the swell and sway of all the waves, that once crashed against my feet, but now forever are all I will ever know. The rising incense of the poem reaching up to the heavens, and we know we will never see the world without the lens of death, until our mortal bodies are stripped from us, and all that is left is nothing, except what was made to be transformed into what is always beautiful, new and transient. Our penitent souls reaching out for truth with hands open wide. Sometimes when our hands are open wide, they only receive what is phantasmal. not easily held or grasped. So we throw this away, and then at the end of the world realize that what we were given could have indeed rescued the world from its own disaster. My heart is waiting to open wide so that you can feel it and hold it closer against your skin. The empty shell of a world that bitterly rejected the love it had known in its youth. Now this world is very unfamiliar to me. My words were a witness to the times of death within the hollow shell of a world that ripped open through the clouds, and a mind was a vision for the future. That, no matter how hard we fought, the power, the money, the idolatry was in the hands of our enemies. And we would never be able to overthrow their regime. Would always fall so deep into the oceans away from what they are. And now, the world was blind to anything except what was 1 inch from its face. And we could never convince the world to open eyes wider, because all the eyes in the world were not open enough to see us, could not hold us in its sight. I've climbed the mountains of the world, and from there could see the universe falling away from me. My heart was a shallow shell of what it was before. The light of God, now in my heart, illuminating my steps. And we flee from those who would enslave us with their bickering words, arguing against what is self-evident. But people can be convinced against even what is self-evidently true. We would search forever for anything within the universe to make us whole. And I could travel throughout all worlds and feel all people in all times and places, and would feel nothing but a desire to return to the heart of God. But the light of God guided me elsewhere, and I would never return to my home again. The chaotic clamor of the world, of the vows of silence of dear friends, convincing the world that we need to be told where we need to go. We become shells of what we used to be, forgetting the power of all words, falling forever into worlds where we never hear the music of the simple days passing us by, falling asleep that night and watching the stars pass us by. My book written on the floor of your bedroom, my words strewn across these avenues forever, where you can reach down and listen and hear my whisper, hear my joy and fathom my pain in the same joy. The ecstatic sudden motion of feeling everything, including the silent breaths of peaceful creatures throughout all the world. Unstoppable in our days of rising up, flaring up with emotion and power, my mind was unstoppable. No one could overcome the violence of my heart. No fingers could snuff out that light from my sacred heart. Our destiny was always to sit here forever and write. I am more than experience. I am life fulfilled and fallen into its rightful place. Never able to stop expressing the rhythms of dancing souls within a world that was always deaf to all music, unable to hear anything at all. My shattered soul filled with chaos, every thought as flowing and as monumental as the previous, and always coming back to you. The shining lights following us as we walk through the dark forest, clearing away all the evil magic forever, so that it can never meet us or follow us home. The home we labored so long to build together, the life in a family, the passing of unhinged words, the memory of time passing forever, and there will be infinite memories ahead. Your heaven collided with mine, and we knew that we had to protect our new home, which we found only together. The flight across nations which were collapsing underneath their own weight. As I sit here persistently and read memories of tortured souls who lived not so long ago, the voices cut out forever and never heard ever again. The atlas in our hearts guided us to places we had never even read about in books. The shell of the world opened itself to me in all its welcoming nature, and I know that the many phases of the moon pass with no indication of their coming or of their going. They exist here only for a moment, flaring up, vanishing, and are never seen or heard again, only felt softly. All of our memories joined together as one personable soul that greets you when you are in distress, holds you closer than these winds, and these memories are recalled every now and then, but only when we sit back and listen forever to the sound of the clawing voices in the night. The subtle wind of the passing seasons holds us in its sway only for a short time. and then we never feel rocked by the winds ever again. Words crafted carefully, scribing love like a tattoo on your heart. The blind world walks amidst the shadows of broken hearts. The dreams of our youth were shattered, and they were walked over and trampled, and this never ends. My clear vision, through which I can see the entire world the way it is, as I wake up and grow up within this world, grasping out for words which I never understood, never stopped long enough to listen to. My future fills me with quiet, and as the ship takes me away from the home I had never known, I fall asleep into these dreams forever. Scattered lives like scattered thoughts spread all across the world. We can never come back together as one. The damage has been done, heartstrings uniting souls now completely severed, and there will be no way to reattach them. My life within this world would rather crash into the oceans than to ever be thrust away into shadows of regret. Our terrible mistakes which we made in our lives always haunt us. My glorious return to life within the world of clamoring sounds, with the bickering banter of politicians calling for fists of iron to grasp our wrists until we lose the will to move. The damage to our hearts will never be repaired. All we can do is stand here and write letters to the world, but they will never reach the eyes of anyone, always being torn apart before they reach any itching ear. The key was locked on the door that would allow us to escape from our own misfortune into the bright and glorious world. The life in my heart pulled me forever to what I knew I would always want and always love. Although when nations are torn by war, we stay here as souls isolated, unable to reach the willing hand of the other. So much sorrow in my bones prevents me from dreaming. If I fall down and hit the ground, my body will be broken, my life completed. My dreams torn from me forever. The euphoric aspiration within my mind to be somewhere, anywhere away from here, to enter other worlds and be swallowed whole by these worlds. But we are no longer welcome by this world. The world had long ago forced us out of our homes, the forests of the world removed, the oceans overflowing with trash, and our hearts overwhelmed with the overflowing fuel pushing us forward forever. We would never give up, always plow on forward, no matter how difficult it is to see in the night. The steeples of ancient churches torn down, and a new religion put up in its place, as if the old one had never existed, its memory expunged forever from our shallow minds. We wish we could remember a different time and place, but we are suffocating under the weight of a world that now presses down on our shoulders, and those who persecute us cannot see the value in our fragile souls, or our value never acknowledged, our prayers lifted up toward the sky, but we know that no God will ever answer them. The light of my soul forever will be my eyes, and I see all throughout the world the withering hearts flowing and breathing, needing to fall somewhere away from here, away from the banner of the broken cross now lifted high above the world. The streets empty forever, and all we hear are the constant obedient voices that we never hear in the darkness of the world. I am blinded by the absence of true love. I am sieved by the scars of my past, never recollecting my power, wishing I could forever sit in here and never give up on self-expression, but every voice that is raised up is cut down and is never heard, locked away, and there is no telling if any of those ships will catch the drift of my distant voice. I am here silent as the wind itself, as gentle as its true embrace. Float through my clouds for as long as you can drift through them, and when you are there, you will hear of the memories of the times I've traveled through the worlds, lived 1,000 lives, dreamed of sinking so deep into sinking sand that I never again can understand the joy of the scriptures which we write and memorize forever. Flowing forward toward the future of the eternal city, an ethereal city, which we can never find or grasp or understand. The dreams of the future never flooding my almighty heart, understanding that no matter how many worlds I drift through, I live your life and I become one with the passing of oceans. Violence in our hearts is overwhelming. Flowing through all things, we became the saints of the end of all worlds. We inhaled the poisonous air of eternal misery. through all of the worlds that I have seen and lived through. I must keep my deepest secrets close to my heart, so that you can never understand the message that is veiled, and in hearing you, you would not understand. No eyes to see, no ears to hear, only a vacuous heart that will never be filled with any emotion. My heart craved a home, and I ended up living in thousands, for thousands of lifetimes. And in all of these lifetimes, I gripped onto love forever. And I had known love for 1,000 times, and 1,000 more times had been rejected, and not known a single moment of peace in the world, knowing that I am prophet, the bearer of all justice. Cling on to me closer than you would hold a friend. My promises are certain. When your heart is unsure, my dreams in all of the worlds of finding new ones are the perpetual numbness in my soul from dulling my mind to the expressions of joy, of thriving in the oceans of panic, of desperate and certain movements. Even in this ocean of panic, our hearts were always filled with a certain hope, a spell we fell under that allowed us to open our souls to the love that was freely offered to us. What we were looking for in all of these worlds were scriptures that we could cling on to hold, which would guide us to a place where we would find our hearts in a stable motion. The spark in my soul always called out to you, to light up every fire in the world. The warmth coming home to this fire. The warmth of coming home to this fire. Warming our hands in the dead of winter. Finally able to find a place where we can rest and be comfortable. My only joy comes from finding the peace of souls united. I find myself somewhere in the midst of the music, drinking away the misery and feeling the meaning behind the song, the passion of waiting for the time to pass, waiting for someone to break through the iron walls of the prison we lived our entire lives in. My heart was inseparable from yours. I was waiting inside these prison walls, doing nothing else but writing, waiting for the next passing hour to vanish, until we could not find it again or anything like it. Each single moment within the world will never be replaced by a new one. Our hearts were made new, and now they are blowing up with desire to be loved. The weight of this world still on my shoulders, and I am no longer sure if I am able to stand my own ground. Within this world, the flood of oceans emptying and flooding the crevices of the cities, and we tread through the cities on ships, knowing that no place in the world will ever be our home again. We are always traveling from one place to another, and will never again find our permanent home. Always be going from one place to another on these ships. The desperate hearts within this world hope to find peace under the shadow of the wings of God. But God has left this world forever, never to return, and we will never find anyone other than our own panic in this hollow dream. The days I drifted off to sleep and then relived all of my past experiences, but never again did I experience the joy that I had known in my youth. Always was thrust into the future, without any memory of the past. The angels in the sky had all fled this world, and I was forever unable to return to my home. Was lost now and had no chance of finding anyone. We dream together and imagine a world where everyone can live together. The new day of our future always brings with it new hope. I only have so much within the world that I can hold on to. There was a city of ice, and we traveled there and saw where people used to live before the ice had submerged the world. And we cried out forever for someone to come and find us. But there was not a soul who could hear us, crying out in that cold night for someone to reach out to us and pull us into the light of the day. But we were walking with winter coats, the last ones walking through this world, always winter and never Christmas. The halls where the courts used to be were now completely empty, and we understood with certainty that the iron fist of the magisterium was always doomed to fall. We held the promise we were given as tattoos on our skin, although there was no telling if we would ever be able to read these promises and understand any words that would give us hope. That one day we would escape from this frozen city after the death of all the world. The world was never judged by fire, but only by psalms of ice. The places held as sacred by the magisterium were frozen over completely with the icicles hanging from the ceiling. The world was not always frozen over with this ice. Joy in hearts, even in the midst of the cold, because the religious regime we had fought for so long had been destroyed, and the false god had been slain. The world was better without the iron hand guiding us through the world. The God Emperor was no more. The life in the world was at peace, and all of us were happy. We walked throughout the world knowing that the magic we had fought against was broken. The seas were frozen over, and we walked over these seas that had for so long disconnected our world. The bright sun shining upon us all. Never enough light to melt the ice. But still we tread all of the places that we never could walk before, across all of these oceans. I am your frozen Poseidon, and all the frozen oceans are my home forever. The desolation in the world when the power of my heart is empty. We had destroyed the evil magic together. The rulers of the world had fallen. Their endless bantering came to nothing. Their power, which they thought they would always grasp, came to nothing. But when the false god was slain, there was no true god to take his place. We were all alone, and we strove within the world to triumph over our own despairing thoughts, hoping that there was something we could hold, scriptures we could memorize, knowing they were true. But forever, I had always desired to be held in the arms of the sunlight. There were no signals we could hear, no radio waves, no voices at all. Here forever, we were in the middle of the frozen sea. We had set up our tents and stayed in the middle of the sea. And we lived here for tens of thousands of years, finding a way to thrive and passing our love down that we had found in our fight against the false god every generation. And we knew that the world we had created now belonged to us and no one else. We had no hope for escaping this world except because the world always tended towards violence. Homes could be built up, but there were always those who desired to burn these homes down. Together we would stand as souls connected, hoping that together we could become more than who we were separate. The tempest of the winds called us forever, speaking our names in the midst of the ice storm. I have so many words to say that I will never have the courage to say, will never be able to speak up. My broken heart will never be healed. The silent voices throughout the world will never speak up. We are here forever singing the Psalms of ice. The dreams of our near future, when we will no longer be submerged beneath this ice, when together we can stand united. My only comfort within this world was knowing that the sun still shines even upon a frozen world. I began to travel the world and shovel out the snow, and find the places that were significant in our history, places we had known and held close to our hearts. And I came to the hidden libraries and read books about the world that the magisterium had threatened to burn, and I imbibed the history of the world as it truly was. Words that were almost destroyed, history almost lost. We had only one copy of these books remaining, but I had read them all, and I enjoyed every moment of reading. Reading comes with its power in knowing truth, in inhaling the feelings of souls that had lived so long ago, of emotions, of memory, of life, of routine, of immeasurable power that existed in the past. My memory within the world of standing alone, of holding in my heart the memories of the way the world used to be. We imbibed the recreation of our fallen world, and eventually the ice started to thaw, and we could no longer live on or cross the oceans. So all of us were separated on opposite ends of the world, and could no longer communicate or even see each other, and we all grew apart. And as the years went on, and as the generations passed, we started to hate each other, never knowing what the soul of the other was feeling, always forgetting that there once was a time when the world was one, after the ice had gone away, and there were no oceans to divide us. But now these oceans were immeasurably long distances to travel, and there was nothing any of us could do to reach the other side of these oceans. We tried to create ships, but none of them were seaworthy enough to reach anywhere, except for very short distances before they capsized or filled with water. The world had changed so much in such a short time. The cold wind had brought us together, and when the ice was melted, none of us had the same need as before, which fostered boredom, and this boredom forever eventually turned to fear, and this fear to misunderstanding and anxiety, and then all of this turned to anger, and this anger transformed into hate, and we were transfixed by this anger, and never again would be united. every continent on separate nations that all hated each other. Peoples who once stood as one in their fight against darkness now were their own darkness. The world we wanted was gone. We were now inhabiting the nightmare of our own making. My warm heart knew what was happening, but eventually realized that there was nothing at all I could do to prevent the nations from warring against each other. Eventually the nations were able to create ships of iron, and they did cross the oceans, and these ships reached the other shores and landed their armies, attempting to destroy other nations, subjugating them under their grip. Forgetting the times when these nations were all one, my heart was filled with constant anxiety, knowing again that there was nothing at all that I could do to fight. Nothing at all that I could do to live in this world away from the flood of violence. Our eyes were open to the truth, but we never obeyed its message. That when the sword was in our hands, we would never be able to stop the flood of firearms. Our real enemy was our own human hearts. Our previous subjugation was well deserved. I realized because we had no right to live our own lives, because as soon as we were free, we inflicted worse upon others. We grew to hate those bitterly who lived across our oceans, because we did not understand them, and could never understand what kept us powerless. I became a bard, keeping the memories of the old world alive, and I memorized the stories of the way the world was, so that I could spread my message with the world. And there was no reason for the violence. The violence and devastation could only bring upon death, and nothing more. Anger never satisfied us. All it did was leave us blind, unable to see the soul or the heart of the other. What good was it overthrowing the magisterium if the flaming torches of violence were still in our hands? My deep connection with those who have nothing. My love crossed all of the oceans, and those I spoke to first were the poor within the world. My message was simple and eternal and unbreakable. If this is the world we made, then we can unmake it and live as souls free and desperate. We had no time to waste. I am the prophet, the bard, the singer of secrets throughout the world. Our greatest enemy, the false god, had been slain, and I reminded the world of the struggle that they went through to overthrow this false god. There was indeed a song in the soul of all, and all we needed was to find this song, and our orchestra would play it forever. Dreams in our souls always were destined to disappear. When we became comfortable in this dream, we remind ourselves that a dream was all it was and nothing more. The morning reminded me of its passing. The song in my heart grew dimmer every day as my strength wore thin. My love was all-encompassing. Everyone had the opportunity to hear my words, and they stayed inside the heart in the world. They stayed there and set up their camp, looking for a permanent home. The fortifications of my soul began to cave in, and was submerged against the barrage of violent words, which followed me at all times into the shadows. Throughout all my life, I drifted off through different times and places. I never stayed in one place, and I lost all of my bearings on what it is like to be stable, and I knew that my heart would never heal when all times and places were my abode. No place at all would be a home. Do you know what makes a home a home? If you do, you are luckier than most in the world. I've seen the ashes blown apart by the wind, by the steady motion of conceit, of desperation to find what we know is always ungraspable, and all we ever wanted to be held and be understood. The villains of our stories were always known, and we would never escape them. We had no desire to. Our conflict within the world was all we had ever known. The constant war with those who wanted to destroy us. The constant slavery of those who thought they owned us. But they never knew how free-flowing our hearts were. Like all the oceans, and I will be your Poseidon forever. Somewhere the current takes me far away, and I lie back and become enamored by its source and its sway. Listen to my song on the distant waves as I lie back, enamored by the current, the riptide taking me far away from all of the places I had ever been familiar with. The silence of the world as I drift off somewhere and will never be found. The life in the world is never oversold. I have traveled far away across the sea, to paths that were always unknown. The heart of mine would burn forever. This mind of mine, enamored with the current, never letting go of its feeling, float with me far away from the God of our own making, who we thought we would never overcome. The ruler of this world was judged by his origination. We fell away from him forever. The mirror of the world, through which we see all the panic we have fallen into. When the world is judged as debased, hopeless, we stay here, writing forever, hoping to describe our world. We will never come close to describing this world. We'll fall away from the tides of change into a future which will never again be kind, as unpredictable as it is cruel. No one can tell you anything about the future. I wanted to create my own world, but knew that I was as powerless as the winds themselves, unable to direct their own movements. Forever, they would be swayed by forces outside of their own control. Like the sailing ship with no rudder, always at the mercy of the winds, and there is no telling where these winds might sweep it off to. It was the same with me. I existed in the worlds as I was, unable to stop the conquest of these worlds by the false god who claimed them, who would never stop until all of us, subjugated under his magical control, or are dead. The lightning in my heart urging me forward. You cannot see what I see, and you will never feel what I feel. Both of us do see the distant lands across the oceans, and we long for them. Both of us gazing up at the moon and dreaming about leaving this world. Only I can leave this world, and you will never set an inch away from here. I will be a wandering soul forever, away from this place that used to be my home. Now no place at all is my home, and all places are my abode. I stand on the deck of the ship as the rain cascades down, falling down the deck. And I slip and fall, and I'm unable to get my bearings. The voice heard in the wind of the storm were carried here, and took forever to get here, and never again will hear them after they pass or anything like them. We live and die for the passion in our hearts which drives us to move on forever. Drawn by these same winds, called by name by God, singled out, and now here we are in the world striving to find a way out of the pain in our hearts. As long as I'm here in this universe, I will be charting my way back home, but will never find it. A place far away from here. A place long gone, and no one can tell if it exists anymore, or if the bridge to get there has been severed. I'm the power of all joy coming together as one single and whole anthem. The lifetime of power, the cadence of millions of songs, the pain in my heart because all of these things I will never find my home. Always destined to float so far away forever, and never arrive at my destination. Always one eternal voyage towards the next empty space in the world. Always one glowing heart within me that breaks every morning when I make landfall in a new world, and realize that I will never reach my home, my origin point, the place that I always loved. No matter how many flaws this home had, it was my home, and I would never want to leave my rightful place. The chaos of the wind was always driving me toward new and different worlds. Always bring me to places I knew I would never. Bring me to places I knew I'd arrive in. My heart was always filled with the same passion that drove me toward my home, even though I never would return. I know that this is the nature of souls. Souls long for what is home and what is true, regardless of how difficult it will be to find this place or to ever achieve this goal. My heart was open to all of the pain that it encounters, never turning away, always open to new and fearful experiences. Because I know I am only a sojourner, and I soon will not know this world, and will not feel it again or anything like it. The burning sea in my heart was always desperate to feel more, to experience more, and to fall in love with this world. But all it wanted was its home, no matter how many different worlds it traveled to. It would never again find this home. The only action I was capable of was being transported from one life in one world to others. My fear became realization when I realized I would never find this home, so I tried to forget it. But no matter what I did or how hard I tried, I would never forget this home. It would always follow me into dreams and remind me about itself, but never would be able to come close to finding it in the real world. If my heart is growing dim, hold me closer and keep telling me that one day I'll find my home. But there is no reality I can imagine where I find it. The worst always occurs until my soul is broken, and I stand here unable to move. The worst fear was that I would always be here with no way to fight, no way to stand my own ground. And I knew the life in my veins was fleeting, but I could never die. Would always drift off to another universe, where I hoped to find a way out, and to return to the previous one, so I could follow the chain back to my home, and to return to the source. That's the first Supra section. Thanks for listening. Next one will be arriving soon.